fellow board members, and it sounds like all of us are concerned about every student's safety. So I think we're in consensus with that tonight. It seems like we're in a consensus too that all of this information as it relates to this item happened quickly, and we haven't had a chance to review a lot of the material. As I listened to Mr. Barbieri go through his file here, I would like to have the opportunity to get that information so that I can make a better decision as to what I would like to do. We certainly want to make sure all of the children are safe. We want to make sure we can get the monies for the teachers and their salaries. We want our fine arts. We want all of those things, but I don't want us to rush. But I would like the message to be left here tonight that we certainly want to make sure that we want to see every child in Palm Beach County safe. And I really do believe I need more time to digest the information that some of my fellow board members have that I don't have. I did my best by getting the information that I could from General Counsel as well as the superintendent, but this was almost in a daytime, not quite 2 days of trying to get answers to questions. So I was wondering, is there a possibility, and as I heard you, Mr. Barbieri, say that there's a possibility that we have time before it has to get to the county. We may be able to do another board meeting. We may be able to come back and revisit this so that we can have more discussion and come back with a different item.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you, and I'm not averse if we're able to have the extra time to having more time. Where I become concerned is that, and some of us have spent a lot of time in Tallahassee. Anybody, if you mention the name Attorney Ron Myers, everybody tells you he is the attorney. That is a very sharp man. I don't know that any of us have the ability to question something that he sends to us. That man has more depth and breadth of understanding. And if he says that if we put in the language non-charter, it's a problem, and yes, there could be an injunction, I've got to listen to him because he's the expert. I'm not an attorney. It's fine to read other opinions, but if you ask anybody, he is the man when it comes to those types of rulings. So I don't have a problem waiting, but I do have to tell you that when we seek an outside attorney and that attorney gives us an opinion, and if we don't like the opinion, we try to find a way to fight it, I think that's a problem.
Okay, Ms. Rico, but before you do, just a question from Mr. Burke. On timeline, I know from past experience in dealing with the county, it takes well over a month, if not longer, from the time we take action for them to take these items through staff. So it may be tough. Do we know what the impact is?
We're already working with the county because we had planned to be in front of them on July 10th as part of that agenda. Their next meeting would be the regular meeting on August 14th. So
it would.
I think we could navigate that, right? If I give them notice immediately and let them know.
Okay.
If we have to.
That answers it. Okay. All right, Ms. Rico and then Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of remarks. Some are general, some are specific to some of the things that were said so that we have some clarity. First, I want to acknowledge, of course, this board is no stranger to complex litigation and being involved in matters that are bold, impactful for the entire state, and they have taken them on as a group, as a collective client, with clarity and strategic initiative. This particular matter came up at the last minute, as everyone is complaining about, and I'm complaining too. We sought recommendation or assistance from outside counsel, who's been our outside counsel on these matters for years in prior referendum matters and ballot language, and he is considered to be the expert. No lawyer's opinion is infallible, but I do agree with the legal position, if we had to take it, that Mr. Barbieri outlined, and that is that this particular recommendation that was supported by my office with a lot of review and discussion with Mr. Meyer, as well as meeting with the team, we supported the superintendent's recommendation as a strategic matter to avoid protracted litigation that could derail the timing of our referendum, but in no way to concede or recede from our stance that sharing of this money is subject to challenge and subject to our defense of it. We've been fighting local authority and control for a long time in various venues. However, I want to make it very clear the legal guidance on this from courts, from the legislature, et cetera, is unclear. It's unsettled. The Indian River case is distinguishable. The financial statutory requirements of funding in the statutes for school funding and for these matters is very complex. So I do think that it would be a challenge that we would hope to win, but nonetheless a challenge to be avoided in this particular timing issue. Okay, so that's the reason. And so it's a good faith, recommendation that came with a lot of consideration. And I just wanted the board to know that the Office of General Counsel worked very closely with the superintendent and leadership team to ensure that we were taking a recommendation that would allow the board to avoid the risk. And certainly it's up to the board to determine and decide which way to go, and perhaps there's some other strategies. As to Dr. Robinson's raising the issue of getting agreement with charter schools, and you said you didn't know what that would look like, we would have to get a contractual amendment with all 48 of our independent charters to reach that agreement. So that would be the methodology. If one of them didn't like it, they can go to mediation with the DOE. That goes to impasse if it's not resolved. And so again, there's another protracted methodology there.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Andrews, and then Mr. Barbieri.
I just feel that I have not had a chance to speak with the charters. We did read that one letter from one charter school, but as I think about it, I do work closely with the charter schools in District 6 and have good relationships out there. I would like to have some conversations as we have now talked about working together to make sure that all children are safe. So I would like to have that extended conversation. I could not do that within a day when I didn't have that piece of information so that I could act on it. So I think I need to have that bit of information as well as additional information that came from other sources to come back with a recommendation. And I think we as a board need to come back with more information and then decide where we want to go.
Mr. Barbieri?
Yeah, in response to Mrs. Brill, I just want to remind all my colleagues that this crunch was caused by this so-called expert, because for the last two decisions he gave us, we didn't have a problem excluding charter schools until we got his letter of June 17th, which talks about recently enacted language in section 1002.33, which there isn't, because I already told you I looked at the statutes for 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and that language is identical. So Mr. Meyer made an error. He tried to correct it at the last minute. He put this crunch on us. I think we should move this until the next school board meeting. Give us time. Mr. Ars has already reached out to me this evening. He's willing to help us try and get arrangements with the school. I believe what I read was he's willing to work with us to get charter schools to sign on to us helping fund for security and mental health in return for no litigation against us. Give us time to get this done, to see if we can get this done. You know what? As a fallback position, we go back to the quarter mill, and if the charter schools don't want to agree with us, then they get nothing, because we'll go back to the quarter mill on the ballot in November, and we'll fund our performing arts teachers, and we'll give them their 10% of our $50 million that we get for the quarter mill, and then we're done with it. So I just want the time to try and get this done instead of trying to make a decision tonight. So
Right.
I make a motion that we move this until the...
Can you hold it for me, make one more comment? This is
Well, you're the
just
chairman, so I
real
can
quick.
do anything you would like me to do, Mr. Shaw.
No, but I will let you do it. Just something to be aware, and a lot of things have been said about, and I think Dr. Robinson made a really good point when she said we're opening up a can of worms, but it's already opened. Look at the constitutional amendment number 8 and what that has, because that is precisely something right now that's polling statewide 75% of the public in favor of that amendment, which takes all of the school district's control of charter schools completely away from the school district and hands it to an independent, essentially other state education organization. So it's open. So, Mr. Barbieri, now we'll entertain your motion.
I'd like to move the agenda item tonight to the next board meeting, which I believe is
To table it to
July 18th.
Okay, we have a motion to move to table and move to July 18th. Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Dr. Robinson. There's no discussion, so we'll vote on this. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is FMPA 1, purchase of bid exempt classroom materials. Dr. Fenoy.
I recommend the board approve the purchase of bid-exempt classroom and instructional materials for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019, not to exceed $10,500,000.
Is there a motion? Motion by Dr. Robinson, a second by Mrs. Andrews. Mr. Barbieri, I think you pulled this item.
My concern is on iReady. So I just want to remind the board that we spent $5.2 million, I believe, for the iReady contract. It was approved 2 years ago, so we made a payment of $1.3 million to them in September of 2016, another payment of $1.3 million in September of 2017, and we're due to make the last payment to them in September of this year. I think September 18th, I looked at the contract. When I found out that the teachers aren't allowed to give any work to the students at home because the iReady program does not work on Apple products like iPads and iPhones the kids use. I went to the previous deputy superintendent back in June of last year, May of last year, and I said, we have leverage at this point. Do not pay the payment to them until they make sure that the iReady program will work for all children in the district so they can use it. It's a $5 million program. They should be able to use it. He agreed that he would put pressure on on Curriculum Associates to make sure that it was ready for the fall. It wasn't. So I went back to him again when I found out it wasn't, and they promised that they would get it done by December. Now they want the $1.3 million in September, and they're saying that they're going to get it ready in the fall. I just want to make sure that the board members acknowledge or are aware of the fact that this is the last payment. If we don't get them to fix it, that's never going to be fixed. In addition to that, I don't know if all of you know, but when I was concerned about what we were paying Curriculum Associates for iReady, because I heard that it was the largest contract they ever sold in the United States to the Palm Beach County School District, I asked purchasing to give me a list of the expenditures, and I found out that we have this thing that goes along with iReady called Toolkit. Now, Toolkit, the first year was $0. They wanted $850,000. It cost us $0 because that's what they agreed to give it to us. Last year, they agreed to give it to us for $250,000. The deputy superintendent tells me that this year they want $550,000 for the same thing because now they know the teachers are all using it, and now they're holding us hostage. They want $550,000 instead of the $250,000 we gave them the last year and the $0 we gave them the first year. I think it's ludicrous. So I would like the board to instruct the administration that no money is paid to Curriculum Associates for Toolkit unless it comes back to us as a separate line item, agenda item, so we can determine whether or not we want to spend any more money buying Toolkit and what we're willing to spend so that Curriculum Associates is on notice that this school board is watching it. Because the way it currently works is when we approve this item tonight, all this other stuff they're allowed to go ahead and buy that stuff because they're a single source, so they're allowed to go and buy that, and we don't get to see that. It's just done. It just gets paid. So if they want to charge us $550,000 and the district can't get it done for less than that, then it'll come out of that money, and we'll find out after the fact that we paid Curriculum Associates $550,000 for Toolkit, like we never knew that we paid them $250,000 for Toolkit last year until after the fact. So I would like the board to agree that the administration can't pay another dime to Curriculum Associates for Toolkit, that large purchase for Toolkit that they want for this current year renewal, or pay the $1.3 million in September unless everything works in August, so that Curriculum Associates is put on notice. You better get it working in August. I've talked to the general counsel. They were able to get an addendum on the contract the first year that says we can withhold payments on that contract if they partially perform. And I say to you, they're partially performing by not getting this software program working properly for the children in this school district.
Ms. Rico, we would need an amendment on the agenda, or can we just administratively direct?
Yes, you would need to, you'd need an amendment. To this
Okay.
Action.
All right, we'll take any other discussion before we entertain an amendment. Mrs. McQuinn.
I just want to point out that Dr. Fenoy, in one of our earlier meetings after we appointed him superintendent, I know that he had a personal concern about the money and all the ancillary pieces that go into iReady. And so number one, I support this. Just letting you know that I know that the money was a concern to him, and he wanted to have time. Please, Dr. Fenoy, correct me if you'd like, or clarify. But he wanted to not spring that on teachers when they already know what they're planning for next year. So I wanted to just point out that I know he's very aware of that big ticket money item.
All right, any other discussion, Mrs. Andrews?
Yes, I think a lot of other districts use iReady, and I would like to have it checked to see what the process is as it relates to other districts, and have we just been used? Broward, I think, you all know exactly where it is around the state, and as I'm looking at this package that we've gotten, that's kind of ancillary, that they can kind of decide how much they want to charge us whenever they get ready. I would like to see how that's working in other districts, if someone can check that out for me, please.
All right, Mr. Barbieri, would you like to make a motion? Before you do, I do want to, I agree with the idea of this. I think it's important for us to hold vendors accountable in a different way, because we've seen a few times that things start out okay and then it starts costing us more. So, Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, just before I make the motion. So, you know, as part of that discovery that I had with the purchasing department, I found out that all of this, you'd be amazed at how much money we spend with Curriculum Associates to back up the iReady program. Do you know all of the schools buy books and research materials and testing and all this stuff to support the iReady program? My only concern, and I agree that the teachers, a lot of the teachers like it and they're using it and it's helping the kids. The problem that I have is the administration was not honest with this board when we bought that program to tell us that in addition to the $5.2 million that you're going to spend for this software program, that you would think once you buy a software program, you can use it on your computers without having to spend another $1 million for other stuff, but we weren't told that. And I understand that all the schools are purchasing stuff for iReady from the Curriculum Associates directly, and there's no way for central office to monitor that. And I'm not suggesting that we stop those payments, because the teachers need those materials at this point to make sure the kids have what they need. All I'm suggesting is we stop the purchase of the toolkit item until it comes back to this board for further discussion. So I will make a motion that that before another penny is paid to Curriculum Associates for toolkit by the central office, a big ticket item, that it comes back to the school board as an agenda item so we can discuss it and see exactly what the cost is.
We have an amendment by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Andrews. I think we had two people. Are you all here to discuss it, or?
We were, but it's unnecessary. I was just here in case I could help with the amendment, but that works.
We were
perfectly.
looking forward to this presentation because we saw a lot of action going on out there for a couple minutes. Any other discussion? Mrs. Andrews.
I just heard it was bundled, that money was bundled in the package where other districts didn't have to pay the kind of money that we're paying. So please check it out.
So, and I think that Mr. Burke should pay any difference that we have on the contract. So, so seeing no other discussion, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Mr. Burke and Mr. Oswald, you all got off the hook really, really easy on that one. Next item is FMP F1.
I recommend that we'll receive and accept the monthly contract and disbursement report as submitted.
Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Brill. Dr. Robinson.
Yep, I'm just pulling this because we're not good enough, so I won't support it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
6-1.
Or 6-1 rather, with Dr. Robinson voting against. Our next item is P3.
I recommend the board approve the job descriptions as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in Dr. Robinson.
Okay, so I thought somebody else pulled this, but let me just say that while I don't think it really belongs in the job description, I'm very clear that this manager of mental and behavioral health services and the professional for mental health needs to be clearly understand the impact of trauma on children, all kinds of trauma. And I will just, and Mr. Oswald knows, I told him my granddaughter, whose mother was born in Jamaica, is traumatized every time she sees the president on TV, right? Because she is afraid that something's going to happen to her mother, despite the fact that she's a United States citizen. So what happens to children when they see how cruel the world is if we have somebody there to help them who doesn't understand their trauma? That's the only point I want to make. I don't think it belongs necessarily in the job description. I'm not going to argue that, but I'm going to trust that the people who will be hiring folks will keep that in mind. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is P4.
I recommend the board approve the personnel addendum as submitted.
Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Brill, second by Dr. Robinson. Two statements we need to make. The first one is the board always recognizes during the meeting employees who passed away recently. Tonight we have one, Michael Collier, who was a behavior intervention associate at Crossroads Elementary School, was born in 1961, passed away in 2017. So if we can, please take a moment of silence in remembrance of this employee and family. Thank you very much. We had two items, P3 and P4, that had good cause. These items were added to the agenda to ensure that the employees and personnel actions could be effectively handled as quickly as possible. So our next item.
We take a vote and discussion.
Oh, discussion on P4. Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, I didn't pull P1 because I saw P4 was here and I knew I'd have an opportunity to make a comment. So, Mr. Superintendent, you're new here with respect to this issue, but I've been asking for years why we hire 1,000 to 1,400 teachers every year, but we non-renew highly effective teachers every year at the same time. And I would like us to look at that more closely, because if you have ineffective teachers, and I agree that out of 13,000 teachers, there are teachers here that should lose their jobs because they're not effective. They're in the small minority, I believe, but I would like us to look at this situation and figure out how we can possibly have to go out and find new teachers every year when we non-renew highly effective or effective teachers. So if they're effective or highly effective and they're not getting along with the administration in their school, then move them to another school where they can get along with the administration, because if they're highly effective or effective, it means they're effectively teaching our children, and that's what they're supposed to do. So I would like us to take a look at this, because I still don't understand how we can non-renew effective and highly effective teachers every single year without giving them any cause or any reason why we're non-renewing them, and then go out in the same year and have to find 1,000 to 1,400 more teachers. So can we please revisit that situation and see what can be done to clean it up? Perhaps the regional offices have to approve the non-renewals and give a reason why they're. I would just like to have some assurances that we're not non-renewing teachers that are effective or highly effective because there's a personality conflict between them and some administrator at the school, which seems to be a lot of the complaints that the school board members hear. So can we have some discussion or some review of that situation?
Yeah, I'll have the team. We'll, again, like, as you stated, this is new to me, but we'll definitely start looking at it and see what sort of recommendations we can bring back.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. I completely agree. And sometimes you're working someplace and you just don't get along with your supervisor, but you're an excellent employee, and in a different environment, it can be fabulous if they are effective and highly effective. I think that we need to look to place them. But the other barrier that I sometimes hear from teachers is that, going from, just like moving students from area to area, it's moving teachers going from, let's say, the south area to the north area, that there's certain barriers that way. So I think that before we non-renew, or when we know it's not working out for a teacher, we do need to look at whether we can place them somewhere else in another school, because if they are effective and highly effective, they deserve to have a job.
Sure.
Mrs. Andrews.
And having worked in that job for many years, we have done better in the past. In our past years, we did have a process where it had to go through the area office to check through exactly what was going on at that school center. And when you really think about these people that you let go, many times they can't even get a decent reference, but yet and still their evaluation says effective, because sometimes there's no response when it's the time for a reference. So we do need to clean that up.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So I will add two things. One is, I don't think we should assume that because their evaluation instrument says they're effective or highly effective that they actually are. But secondly, I would request that we, after staff has a chance to look at best practices, that we have a workshop to discuss the current state and where we want to go.
All right. Any other discussion? Call the question on this. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is PC 6.
I recommend the board approve the owner and construction management at-risk services contract with the Whites Company, LLC, to provide construction management at-risk services for the modernization of Washington Elementary School. Request a proposal for 18C-016R, project number 0191-7390, and approve pre-construction fees of $90,000. And authorize the superintendent and the board chair to finalize and sign all required documents as necessary.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mr. Barbieri. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. PC 7.
PC 7, I recommend the board approve the owner and construction management at-risk services contract with Moss & Associates, LLC, to provide construction management at-risk services for the modernization of Verde Elementary School. Request for proposal 18C009R, project number 1661-7390, and approve pre-construction fees of $300,444, and authorize the superintendent and board chair to finalize and sign all required documents as necessary.
Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. PIR 2.
I recommend the board approve the real estate sale and purchase contract for acquisition of an improved parcel of land containing 0.23 acres, more or less, located adjacent to Addison Miser Elementary, as herein described. Approve the resolution declaring structures located on the property to be acquired by the school board to be unnecessary for educational purposes, surplus, and without commercial value, and authorize the superintendent and chairman to sign all required documents.
Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All right. Dr. Robinson and then Mr. Barbieri.
I just wanted a reminder, did Cork agree to this? Their recommendation was approval? Okay, just wanted to double.
Mr. Barbieri.
Yeah, just a question. I know there was 3 parcels we were acquiring at Addison Miser. One we already bought. This was the eminent domain that I think the speaker spoke about earlier. Where are we on the 3rd parcel of land? Is that under contract to buy the other house to make us have enough room there to rebuild the school?
No, it's not.
So we're working on that, right?
We are.
So we're negotiating with the owner to get that property?
Yes, I believe we've made an offer.
Okay. All right.
This one just had a very critical timeline, and we actually got him just barely on this agenda.
Okay.
Because he wanted to close on his other house.
Okay.
And I told him I wish they were all that smooth.
Yes, especially in an eminent domain. Usually it doesn't go very well for anybody, but thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is SSEA 9.
SSEA 9, I recommend the board approve the agreement with the healthcare district for the provision of basic school health services from July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Dr. Robinson. Question, Dr. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. While I truly, truly appreciate the healthcare district continuing to fund these nurses, I want more. So, I remember having this conversation before, and I'm glad that we have a nurse that is shared between 4 alternative schools. But can we lower that ratio? Can we work to lower that? Because I think statistically, it's more likely that students who end up in alternative ed are less likely to have health care than other students. So I think there should be a premium placed on getting nurses there more than once a week or whatever. So my only request is that we look to see how we can provide additional nurses via the healthcare district, or if there's some grant or something, so that the alternative schools have more coverage.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. SSEA 12.
SSEA 12, I recommend the school board approve the district's mental health assistance allocation plan.
Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I pulled this because, and I had conversation with Mr. Oswald about this, it troubled me a bit on page 12, that it basically, as I read it, said that only agencies or providers that currently have a behavioral health agreement would be eligible to provide these services on a go-forward basis. And I didn't find that to be satisfactory. There were some outstanding providers at the Student Mental Health Conference at Atlantic that don't currently have behavioral health contracts, for example. And so we had a conversation. I believe that Mr. Oswald might have some suggestions.
Yeah, I have some language that we'd like to read in to add to the plan that would state community providers who currently do not have a behavioral health agreement with the school district of Palm Beach County are eligible to bid on providing school-based mental health services as outlined in this plan. If said provider is approved through the bid process, then this provider must complete and be eligible for with a behavioral health services with a behavioral health agreement with the school district who offer behavioral health, mental health services for Palm Beach County. So we'd like to add that language into it so that any provider is eligible to provide those services. They would just have to complete the behavioral health agreement, as all providers do now. So.
Ms. Rico, if we add that, do you all need to see that before we approve it, or can there be an amendment? Do the amendment? Okay, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So I would offer the amendment using the language from Mr. Oswald.
Motion by Dr. Robinson, second by Mr. Barbieri. So, but you will take a look at it to make sure all the words are right. Is it okay with the board if there's a little wordsmithing that happened on that to make sure? Okay. With that, we'll call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That concludes our agenda. Oh, that's right. Now we need to vote on the whole item. Thank you, Mr. Barbieri. We have a motion on the floor to approve the mental health agreement as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0, and that concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Andrews. All in favor? We stand adjourned.